You're listening to Robinson Ventures Radio, where ingenuity meets innovation.
So welcome to our latest episode of Robinson Ventures Radio. My name is Cian Robinson, founder and president of Robinson Ventures. And with me today is Rachael Jones, co-founder and CEO of Syntax. Rachael, how are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Roswell, Georgia. We're breaking into the 60s from a very long cold spell, so couldn't be happier.
And Roswell is outside Atlanta, is that correct?
Yep, we are in the North Fulton suburbs, as they say. I'm a transplant. I moved to Atlanta in the pandemic from New Jersey, so I'm still getting used to the terrain, but I'm told we're North Fulton County suburb of Atlanta.
Gotcha. And where in New Jersey?
I grew up in North Jersey, so I'm actually Jamaican Jersey girl. I came to this country in the late 80s, and we lived in Inglewood, went to school in Montclair, lived in Bloomfield, West Orange for a while, so very much North Jersey. That would be like exit 145 on the Parkway and higher.
Nice. So Rachael, I don't know if you knew this, I grew up in Jersey as well.
I did not know that.
Yes, ma'am. Northwest Jersey. So Sussex County, so we didn't have an exit off of the Parkway.
You were a turnpiker.
Yeah, we had Turnpike and Route 80.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
So Rachael, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Your journey, your professional journey, your personal journey. Give us a little idea who you are.
My career is quite unique. Current role is co-founder and CEO of Syntax Health, and I've spent about 30 years in healthcare at this point. Glad to say I don't look like it, but still in healthcare for a long time. I think I've had this unique journey where I've explored different interests, passions, but all along the same healthcare industry focus. I was really passionate about healthcare from the start. Being Jamaican, you kind of have three jobs that really count in my culture. It's you're a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. Maybe a nurse counts, but if you're not one of those other jobs, you don't really have a job. So I was actually pre-med when I went to school, and in my junior year of college, I had the chance to do an intensive at a University of Virginia, where you spent 8 weeks sort of as a mock medical school, and you had classes all day, and you did rounds, like mock rounds. And on one of my rounds, the preceptors, I kept asking questions about, well, why is this person here, and what's their plan when they go home, and what if they come back and we haven't solved the case was a liver disease, and there were, the write-up was this person's an alcoholic. So I'm asking all these questions about their aftercare and why are they here? And the preceptor goes, do you want to be a doctor or do you want to be a hospital administrator? And I was like, what is that? Because I didn't even know that was an option to do something in healthcare other than clinical work, right? I didn't know there's a whole management and business side behind healthcare. So I went back and talked to, my career counselor at Montclair State, and like, yeah, you can go and be a hospital administrator. You can go into management of healthcare. And my favorite word is why. It's my favorite question. And the idea of being able to have a career in healthcare, but that was focused on sort of system level problems and making greater impact. If you know the Clifton Strengths Finder, you know the top 5 strengths. And my number one strength is significance, right? So it's all about impact for me and making a bigger difference. So that led me to grad school, which led me to starting a career on the hospital system. My first role was at St. Joe's Hospital in Paterson, New Jersey, which is a comprehensive tertiary hospital system. And from there, it was sort of the rest is history. I was able to work in that role in quality and data and analytics for a number of years, and then got recruited to the dark side, as they say, to Empire Blue Cross. Back in the day, it was now part of the Anthem or Elevance brand, but back in those days, it was Empire, standalone New York plan, and started a career on the health plan operations and analytics. Back in those days, I was doing network contracting support, sort of your straight up total cost of care, health economics, medical economics work, doing analysis for trends and opportunities to bend trend, supporting network contracting, DRG, fee-for-service contracting before value-based care became a thing. In that role was kind of where I had my first opportunity to work with software development. We were one of the earliest clients of TriZetto's Networks Modeler product, which was, back in those days, a product focused on fee-for-service contract optimization. Yep. And I was the only person doing this work in a closet. And I raised my hand quickly to get some automation and some help. And in doing that, I realized that, wow, you can actually use software to scale manual work and allow me to do a lot more work quicker. And we were able to build a whole team around that platform. Love that platform so much. I started to speak on their behalf and do different roundtables and talks. And they said, hey, you've got so much to say. Do you want to come be a product manager? I had no idea what that was, Cian. It just sounded cool. And I learned how to be a product manager literally on the job. I was able to attend pragmatic marketing training in UC Berkeley and get certified in product management. And I learned about the entire software development lifecycle and how to understand user problems and how to market a product and how to price a product and how to commercialize a product from idea to execution. And that's really how I got the software and tech side of my career started, was through that role. And then over time, kind of volleyed between two worlds. So I came back to Health First in New York to run their risk analytics program. Then I went back to the software world and went back to the health plan world, where I ended up leading Anthem's value-based care program on the analytics side, grew that program from 4 million lives to 12 million lives. And my co-founder for Syntax took my role when I moved on and doubled the number of lives in the platform or the program from then. And most recently, before landing here at Syntax, I led the P&L for Cotivity's quality and networks intelligence suite. And so really, if you sort of can capture, in one sentence, my career, I would say it's a systems thinker who has had deep operations and analytics experience, really passionate about value-based care and using technology to solve problems that plague us from an efficiency and workflow perspective.
You have to have passion in identifying problems that are worth solving
Yeah.
and then creating those solutions. So talk to me about the moment in time you knew that you've spent this career in corporate, right? And then all of a sudden the entrepreneurial bug bites you, right? What made you think, hey, now it's time to go out and start Syntax Health, and what got the entrepreneurial bug started for you?
I'll be lying if I said that's what happened. That is not what happened at all. I was very happy in my corporate bubble. See, and I was living the corporate life and enjoying, the cushy bonus and all the things that come with that stability, right? What was happening, I would say two things. One, the direction of what I was hired to do, right? I was hired to sort of revive a couple of product lines that were lagging a bit, and one that was on the shelf. And I was also hired to kind of build out a vision for value-based care enablement at my last place. And so I did the first part, took us about 2.5 years, but we relaunched our quality platform, got it to best in class. We relaunched a network intelligence platform and revived the solution that was on the shelf and had one of the largest contracts, for that platform ever, and was all set to now start to work on the bigger vision around an end-to-end portfolio for value-based care. And the company's direction shifted to one that was now focused on really positioning for acquisition or sale. And so when that's happening, you stop building, right? And you start harvesting. And I'm more of a builder than a harvester. So I wasn't looking, but I think a part of me was open to what else could be out there. And working with my mentor, started thinking about how to position myself for a leadership role, maybe at a smaller company, something in the C-suite, right? Chief operating, chief something like that. And in those conversations, I always think when you get very clear about what you want, and for me, I was looking for autonomy, where I could really execute a vision as I saw it. I was looking for mastery, where I can apply the experience I had developed over the years, and purpose, right? Doing something meaningful that created an impact. I was looking for those three things. And I think the universe has a funny way of rewarding what you are intentional about. And one of my mentors said to me, hey, I was having drinks with a buddy of mine. He works for this company. He's an advisor for this company called Redesign Health. Redesign Health is a venture studio. They do startups. And I said, stop you right there. Sir, I'm in my mid-40s. I cannot go back to my parents' house and eat ramen noodles and live in a garage. I have a mortgage and a kid going to college in 6 years. I cannot start up. He's like, wait, before you cut me off, let me explain to you how redesign works. They're very different. They de-risk companies because they do a lot of work up beforehand to research a problem space. They look for experienced founders and operators who have industry expertise, and they surround them with a lot of support. So your first year, They help you with your branding. They help you with launching your company. They guide you each step of the way. They help you, with identifying talent. They provide legal services, accounting services, all this stuff to really de-risk this investment. And they fund your company. They give you the initial pre-revenue funding. And now it's up to you to build something that people will buy. It's up to you to run the company. It's up to you to have full autonomy about how you actually execute this vision, right? It's your vision, but they support you in that launch. And when you're ready to go out and, raise your next round of funding, they're also there to be sort of an advisor and guide. And so I said, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that kind of model existed. Someone like me, in my background, you wouldn't think a traditional founder and entrepreneur. Both my parents worked several jobs, right? I didn't have entrepreneurship in my family, but I did love this idea of starting something from scratch. I had done entrepreneurship, so I had started different things in large companies and created different, products from scratch at Trizetto and at Anthem. So I knew I could take an idea from start to finish because I did that before, but I've never done it outside of the corporate sort of.
Right, you've already had that entrepreneurship. I would key on
Yeah,
that word, right?
exactly.
You had sort of the redesign, but inside a corporation, right?
Exactly.
So Rachel, you had this entrepreneurship experience within a corporate world, right? You took all of these great products and services from idea to launch or redesign to launch, and then redesign comes along, right?
Yeah.
And you now have a similar sort of function in redesign. So talk to us about the moment in time you said yes to the dress for redesign, and now you're moving forward.
Yes to the dress is right. We actually did a roundtable family meeting, my son and my husband and myself, and talked about sort of if we're going to do this, we have to be all in, right? And what that's going to mean for our family and our life.
Rachel,
yeah,
that is, people need to understand how essential that is
tell
to the
me about it.
success of a company, right?
Yeah,
If you do not have that support at home, and whatever home means, it makes the journey to entrepreneurship that much harder. And what's fun is, I have Tucker on the line, right? Tucker saw what it meant for me to start Robinson Ventures 1.0 and restart Robinson Ventures 2.0. Because in 1.0, he was not 27, he was 5.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Right. And so he got to see that and how important it was to have my wife, Natalie, to say, yes, you need to go do this. And so,
Yeah.
Rachel, talk to us about how the family meeting went.
It was interesting because they were used to me traveling for my last role, and all my roles I've traveled before, right? What we hadn't been used to was sort of like the buck stopping with me at this level, right? Like this is me stepping out on a branch and taking a risk, a calculated risk, but still a very big risk to leave the corporate world and start a startup, which we know the stats on startups. What is it like, 90 something percent of startups fail, right? So the stats are real. And, especially as a founder of color, thinking about, if we're successful in even building a company, could we get fundraising? Could we sort of continue to go beyond the initial launch, right? All those things were part of the calculation and what it would mean for the family because, if I'm the primary breadwinner, right, my income is now sort of like calculated risk around that. That's a big risk we're taking on as a family, and were we ready for that? And so I think the conversation went, Mom, we bet on you. We know what you can do, and we've seen you do amazing things before. And so we've got your back. And if this doesn't work, you can always go back to corporate. But we think you should go for it because when you get opportunities like this, and we've got your back. And I think to your point, having that support at home and knowing that if I'm out here trying to slay dragons and and fight big giants in this tech world, that I can come home to a husband and a son who have my back, who understand the double shifts, right? The meetings all day, the little break for family time, and the night shift to actually get work done. Who understand that there'll be weekends where I'm laptop all Saturday, right? Because the work has to get done. Not having to feel guilty about that as a woman, as a mother, it's the wind beneath my wings. So I'm super thankful for that.
I don't want you to gloss over the fact that you are a female founder of color in technology and healthcare.
Yeah.
Has that enabled you, or has it been a challenge?
I've always been in roles where and in spaces where I'm one of one or one of few. And
Right.
I think I'm thankful for growing up in North Jersey and in Inglewood, because I came from a country where, in Jamaica, everybody looked like me for the most part, right? And so coming to the States and being in an environment that didn't look like me, I had to sort of learn to navigate that pretty quickly. The other thing too, I think, in growing up outside of this country is that I didn't identify as that first. I identified as Rachel and all the things that makes Rachel Rachel, right? Who happened to be Black and happened to be a woman, but I was still a whole person with a lot of interest and amazing things outside of the racial and gender identity. So I think I had that already instilled in me from my parents, right? Like, it wasn't a thing to walk into a room and feel strange, because if I'm walking into a room, congratulations, you're lucky I'm here, right? And so it was never a thing. But it definitely, as I continued in college and in grad school, and certainly when I entered the corporate world, I definitely would have a sense of, oh, people are judging me before I even open my mouth. And then when I open my mouth and I say something that's coherent or valuable, it's kind of this, oh, okay, like you do belong here, right? This almost recognition of, I've earned my seat. And so you kind of get used to that, sadly, and you kind of get used to having to sort of prove yourself in those situations. And there's a phrase in the Black community that says you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And I've certainly experienced a bit of that, right? Where I know that I'm outperforming people and having to do backflips and somersaults and land a perfect 10 to get the role. But I think you can either choose to make that a barrier, or you can choose to just recognize that and shine anyway. And I think that's been my mindset, is just, okay, that's one factor, but what else is in my control? I can't control anybody else thinks, but I can control how I show up. I can control what I deliver. And that's what I've always focused on. And especially in this space, every level, different devil. And the devil I have right now is proving that I can lead a company and I can scale a company beyond, our initial early stage, and doing that in a fundraising conversation with folks who are half my age, right? And who are like, well, this is interesting. Tell me why you think you can take this company to the next level. And so I think you just have to know who you are. You have to know what you stand on. And you can't take it personally, because people have their own biases and lived experiences and their own preconceived notions about what someone like you can do. And just realize that as a fact and go in there and shine anyway.
Yeah, and when we talk a little bit in this podcast a few times when we interview non-traditional founders,
Yeah.
right, is the imposter syndrome that needs to be overcome
Oh
sometime,
man. Yeah.
right? And so it seems certainly that you have been able to compartmentalize that and
Mhm.
overcome it excellently.
It's a daily exercise, just like you go to the gym. You've got to talk yourself up. You've got to remember what you've done. You've got to remind yourself of how you got here. Because imposter syndrome, while I think it's an unfortunate way of categorizing systematic oppression in a lot of ways, right? The
Yep.
people who get labeled with imposter syndrome are the same people who have been systematically withheld from a lot of these opportunities. So I want to acknowledge that. But still, any overachiever, any high achiever, anyone who prides themselves on excellence has a bit of that imposter syndrome, I think. It's a daily exercise to say, yeah, you've done your homework, you've prepared, you're ready, go in there. And I think that's okay. It's when you make it cripple you when you get in trouble.
Yeah, I joke around and I say some of the folks that we work with, what's your walk-up song and what's your hype music that
Oh
you're
yeah.
listening, right, every day to get yourself ready? Because people don't realize that sometimes, this is cliche, it's hand to hand out there,
Oh,
right?
hand-to-hand combat for sure. For sure.
Yeah, right. And so
For
you've
sure.
got to get yourself ready to go. I mean, you and I were just recently at Vive. We couldn't
Yeah.
connect because we were doing the hand to hand, not in the same location.
No, that's real. That's real. I've got a very targeted playlist that I have for different occasions, and certainly have a couple power songs for sure.
Yeah, and it was fun to be in Nashville. I don't think I heard any of my walk up or hype music in Nashville, but hey, not so bad. Okay, so talk to us about your in redesign health.
Yeah.
And then you go for what, a couple years, and then they launch you, right? Out you go.
I wish I could say it was that long. We launched the company in the first year.
What?
So yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So I came on board as CEO. At that time, our stealth name was Olympic, which I still kind of like. So you come in, you are CEO of the sort of operating company within the redesign operating portfolio. So for us, it was OpCo 36. And the first few months, my first week, I had 12 meetings, 12 department meetings, because they have teams of people who are already working on your concept before you get here. So I had a branding concept meeting. I had a meeting with legal about incorporation papers and setting up our tax and structure. And I had a meeting with the accounting team. So it's all these people who are working for redesign, but assigned to your company, assigned to your operating enterprise. And I started September of 2022, and we launched Syntax June of 2023.
Wow.
And so it was nonstop. Day one, we were in here working with the product team. My first hire was our engineer and head of product now, Will Hudgens. He came to us from Babylon and was an incredible engineering mind, but also a whiz with data ingestion. So he got to work on building our data models and the structure of Syntax and of what we would be. My third hire was my co-founder and longtime friend and worked with me at Anthem, Emily Walker, who's our actuary and chief analytics officer. And she got to work with me on building out the prototypes and sort of what Syntax would become from a web app and front end perspective. And so it was lots of long hours and nights and requirements documents and all the things. And then on the side, building out a marketing story and a narrative and a branding story, right? So it was the most fun I had in a long time, seeing, because it was literally watching the thing come together. And we were able to launch the company almost 9 months to the day from when we started. And then we launched our MVP 4.5, 5 months after. We launched our MVP in September of 2023. And then we were already off to the races with some pre-go-to-market work, but then we were certainly off to the races once we had the product out, and working to identify with different clients. And I'll tell you, one of the learnings that we had is we created Syntax, and we are able to support anyone who is leveraging the value-based care program, right? So what Syntax Health is actuarial intelligence platform. And what that means is that we've built into the models and methodologies and calculations actuarial science that allows organizations who are looking to transfer risk, which is essentially what value-based care is, right? You're transferring risk from one entity to another in order to incentivize improvement in quality and cost of care. So our platform has that intelligence built in, and it also has a workflow and tooling component to allow for organizations who are looking to scale and create efficiencies in their value-based care programs a way to do so. Because let's be honest, we have not really created infrastructure and tooling for value-based care like we have for fee-for-service reimbursement, right? Fee-for-service reimbursement is a dominant model because, one, it's the way that most people get paid today in the sort of provider payer space. It's also where we've had the most investment, right? I worked at two large companies who had built out robust solutions for fee-for-service claims and payment flow. And so this type of infrastructure does not exist for value-based care. So Syntax Health is aiming to really transform the way we do value-based care by offering infrastructure and tooling that bridges trust and transparency and allows people who are trying to do value-based care, whether you're a payer, a provider, an ACO, a payvider, a community health center, no matter where you sit on the value chain, if you want to meaningfully engage in a value-based care arrangement, we help you do so in a way that's accurate, in a way that's efficient, and most importantly, in a way that really builds trust and collaboration, because value-based care is ultimately a partnership between two organizations, one that who holds the purse from a financial perspective, and one that holds the delivery from a clinical perspective. And how can you bring those two sides together in a way that they both win and they both understand what's at stake and can grow and scale a program over time?
And I think, Rachel, I met Emily Walker was the first time I ran
Yes,
into you guys
yes.
at a conference. I believe it was also in Nashville.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and I think it was a value-based care social determinants of health conference where the current administration was essentially announcing the fact that risk scoring was going to be pivoting more and more and more towards your ability to capture information in and around social determinants of health
Yeah.
and then transferring that risk score to one of those two sides, right? The way it worked was I was sitting there with Holly Howitt from Beacon Community Connections, who's been
Oh,
on our podcast. And Emily sat down and said, "Can I join you for breakfast?" And we were like, "Sure, come on, sit down." And then she started talking about what she does, and and I'm a recovering math major, so I'm like, "Actuarial science, you're chief actuarial officer. What? Wait, what?" And away we went. And then that's sort of how we all got connected to sit there and say, "Okay, this is this is a type of organization and a type of startup that is on the top of the wave and is waiting to ride that wave because as you and I have discussed, more and more of the traditional fee for service companies that are out there, meaning hospital systems and
yeah,
providers,
yeah.
are having to figure out what to do by 2030 and transition their care model and their payment models. And people have to understand those go hand in hand,
That's right.
right? Over to a fee for service world. And we have I don't want to say who it is at Robinson Ventures, but we have a client that just announced that they're going to go to 60/40 by 2030, meaning 60% fee for service and 40% value based care. And they're currently at 95.5. And so you're
Wow.
like, okay, how are you going to be able to do that in 5 years? And I think that's a stretch goal, but it is laudable
Yeah,
nonetheless, right? Because what you're doing is you're moving and you're shifting that care model over to much more of a preventative care model, a quality and engagement model away from a hey, every time you come into the office, I get paid, which
that's right.
means you just stay sick and I get paid more. So, talk to us about what your ideal sort of client, because I know you've done your environmental scan and you have several specific client groupings that you're seeking to help.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. A lot of times I feel like the Pied Piper. We're saying, follow us because the flood is coming. I understand. I understand the mindset. One, I think people don't talk about enough the fact that value-based care inherently is a change management exercise. And what do organizations hate doing? Change,
Change, yeah, absolutely.
right? And so when you say to a hospital's group or you say to a provider system, the way that you have lived your organizational life needs to change in order to capture this, imaginary number, right? Because the other thing that people don't talk about in value-based care is that it's not a upfront thing. You can do care coordination fees. In fact, one of the things that we recommended and we rolled out at Anthem was for certain groups having that care coordination fees kind of be like the upfront and then having the incentive payments sort of like a salary and bonus model in a way, because it does help to sustain organizations who are having a challenge with, investing in value-based care. So I think that makes sense where you can do that.
When we
Yeah.
get into companies, right? And you know this, we've got an FQHC as a client,
Yeah.
right? And we were advising them to sit there and say, hey, look, don't go full risk out of the box,
No, 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 no.
right?
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you lean into this, right? And say,
Yeah.
okay, get into a value based care contract with a payer for stuff you're already doing and already doing well, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And
And
it's
that's
exactly the thesis you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing that we need to sort of give providers grace for is that the change includes this leap of faith. It says you're going to invest in this program. You're going to, maybe get an EHR. You might have to hire some additional nurses. You might hire some community care workers, right? You're going to do something different and you're going to make an upfront investment in order to achieve these savings and quality goals. And if you do those things, there's a promise of a reward on the backside that's going to come from sharing in the savings that you create for that health plan, which for you means revenue. Now, on paper, that makes a lot of sense. But in practice, yeah, it's very hard, especially for organizations who have seen the headlines about, big contracting disputes or programs that don't make it or that have to pay back a penalty. In fact, a few of our clients The reason they came to us is because they were just finished paying back a penalty for missing their targets. And so at the end of the day, what we see, and the reason why I think that goal that your client set is the right goal to set is Pied Piper, right? The value-based care train is here. It is no longer coming. It is here. CMS, even with the new administration, CMS still seems to be very friendly towards value-based care and is doubling down on primary care, specialty care models, Medicaid models, right? That's not going away because we can't keep incurring runaway train costs in healthcare. We pay for healthcare more than anything else we pay for in this country, right?
I mean, we joke around. It's like, okay, when you look at the way the federal government spends its money, we are a military with an insurance company.
That's it. Exactly right. Exactly right. It's
Right.
not. It's a joke, but it's more reality. I mean, every joke has a truth,
And
right?
then our GDP, a percentage of our GDP is like, it's like 20% of our GDP is healthcare
Yeah.
spend.
Yeah.
Right. So you're exactly right, Rachel.
Yeah.
It's how do we bend that curve? And you guys at Syntax, when you get into the FQHCs, when you get into these ACOs, when you get into some interesting hospital systems, you're able to help ingest that data into your platform and
That's
then
right.
really have them specifically map out that how do I move and how do I negotiate these contracts in my VBC journey?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the question that you started was sort of about like who's our ideal client, and I think you just named a good bunch of them. When you sort of look at the marketplace for value-based care, you have independent providers, ACOs, provider faculty practices and groups, and you have community health centers. That's where we've seen the most of our traction is in that first segment. And I think it's because of the fact that these are the folks who've been sort of left to the sides, right? They really haven't had the investment and the support. And when you talk about community health centers and FQHCs, they serve 1 in 10 Americans, 1 in 10, and spend $55 billion in terms of healthcare spending across the nation. And these organizations are caring for some of the most underserved, some of the most vulnerable populations that lead to these costs that we talked about earlier. And so when we work with a CHC, we help that CHC sustain their financial stability. We help them to do what they're already doing and get credit for, in terms of total cost of care and patient-centered care and primary care. And so it's really exciting to work with organizations like the National Association for Community Health Centers and partner with them to help educate community health centers on their opportunity to win in value-based care. Beyond that segment, we see the ability to support larger practices, payviders, right? Hospital systems that have an insurance component, and ultimately payers. I think that I came from a payer space, my co-founder came from payers, and we understand that as much as these organizations have invested in people and in different tools, fundamentally, they struggle with the same efficiencies that providers do. They still use, Excel spreadsheets. They're still using, different slices of PowerPoint and Power BI and PDF and email. They don't have, sophisticated ways to manage their book of business. And it's, at Anthem, my personal experience, I just kept on throwing bodies at it. I kept on hiring people to try to do it manually. And so we believe that, Syntax can ultimately be a solution for the end-to-end ecosystem, but we have to start where we're starting, because I think we start where the need is, and the biggest need seems to be in the provider space.
I'm going to ask you a question, and it's usually my final question, right? Which is, what should I have asked you about that I didn't?
Oh, I think one of the questions that we get quite a bit is, well, why now, right? What are folks doing today, and why now? Why does a solution like yours need to exist? And I think the way I'd answer that is, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And what we're doing right now is insane in this space. We're asking providers to transfer risk and to accept the transfer of risk, and we're not giving them the tools to be able to do so and be empowered to understand what their opportunities are to do well in those constructs, right? The transfer of risk is an actuarial exercise. I don't care how great your population health tool is. If it's not giving you the insights that tie to your contract, you're chasing your tails, and you're not going to be happy with the fact that you may not get the results that you expected. And so I think the time for Syntax is now, because as these value-based care models become more prevalent and more complex, we can't expect people to keep doing it themselves with Excel spreadsheets or outsourcing to expensive firms or trying to back into the answer with population health tools. You need a solution that's tailor-made and custom fit for value-based care contracting, and that's what we offer in Syntax.
Yeah, and I would agree with you 100%, Rachel, because all the low-hanging fruit is already being squeezed
That's right.
out of, right? All the MA plans have already got that risk out of the way, and now we're entering into this next layer where if you are not intentional and hyper defined and know your patient population very carefully, you can lose your shirt quickly
Hmm.
on these
Hmm.
types of contracts. And that's why we love having you guys as a client. I know we're only about a month and a half, 2 months into it, but we really do believe you guys, your value proposition, who you are, what your company's doing, and it is the right time. It is absolutely the right time given the shift. And I would say even under any administration, what they're going to be looking for is you can't keep having your portion of your GDP grow, and you've got to extract that cost. And so having a value-based care proposition and and a way to show that return on investment is occurring is going to be essential to any provider type of organization out there.
That's right.
And
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And we're excited to partner with you all and to, see how we can really grow this year. We had an incredible end of last year where we grew, working with a number of clients across Florida and DC. And this year we want to double that and just continue to make a difference. I think the most rewarding thing for me is when we sit down with our client leadership teams, the CEOs, the CFOs, the chief data or quality officers, and they say, for the first time, I actually understand my contract. For
yeah,
the first
yeah,
time, I see my opportunity and I see how I can take this, the potential dollars I can earn here and redirect it into my organization. And I think that to me is the point of all this, is to give providers the tools to be empowered to own their change. And I think that's what hopefully we're doing all this stuff for, right? Value-based care is meant to create aligned incentives. And that means that I'm motivated by the same things you are, right? And so, yeah, it's exciting to watch that.
anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, just how to find us. You can find us at www.meetsyntax.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well, Rachael Jones on LinkedIn. Certainly welcome you guys to follow us there and check out our website. Reach out to us at info@meetsyntax.com with any questions. And we are currently fundraising. So if you are a venture firm and you like to look at companies who are driving disruptive change in healthcare, and would love to talk to you, love to meet you.
Well, Rachel, thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to get to know you better and then to be able to support Syntax on its growth.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.